The shuttle sliced through Drethion 9's atmosphere like a whisper, its hull steaming against the cold. Kashen Vor stood near the deployment hatch, claws folded behind his back, his gleaming obsidian armor catching flickers of crimson light from the panel displays. He didn't blink as the landing skids touched down. Snow swept across the viewport, a blizzard of white that would blind lesser species. "This is the backwater?" hissed a subordinate, Toxal, with a sneer curling, his lip plates. "They sent us to freeze for this?" "Discipline," Kashen replied curtly. "Every deployment is a test. We are the Scale Blade, death incarnate. Whether on palace marble or ice crust, we perform." He didn't mention that he, too, found the mission beneath their reputation. The humans here had gone dark 2 cycles ago, their outpost ceasing all transmissions. The Council feared sabotage or defection, so they dispatched the Scale Blade. Assassins without equal, chosen for precision, obedience, and most of all, ruthlessness. The hatch opened with a pneumatic hiss. Cold punched into the cabin like a beast. The squad descended in silence, 12 in total, all cloaked in frictionless grav suits. Their steps left no imprint on the snow. Weapons hummed softly, a mix of plasma blades, bolt rifles, and sonic disruptors. Drethion 9 was dead quiet. "Thermal scans," Kashen ordered. "Null patterns. No heat signatures beyond ambient storm drift," replied Jalek, the tech savant. Kashen nodded. "Stay sharp. Humans breed in strange ways. Their feral instincts are inconvenient." They moved out in a fan pattern, navigating the canyon-like terrain around the outpost. Structures half submerged in frost and debris loomed around them. Old prefabs and scaffold shells, now warped by cold and neglect. One of the soldiers, Jorik, pulled up a strip of fabric from the snow. "Look at this," he laughed, holding it up like a trophy. It was human camouflage, a woven mesh of frayed threads, flecked with dirt and frost. Primitive. Ridiculous. Plant fiber mesh and heat-damp paste. "They think this fools sensors," Toxal chortled. "Do they smear themselves with mud too?" The squad's laughter crackled through the comms. Kashen allowed himself a quiet exhale. The humans here were clearly unprepared. Maybe this would be a simple sweep after all. They found the first corpse near the comms array. Human. Frozen solid, mouth open mid-scream. A cauterized puncture through the throat marked the kill. Done with precision. Not theirs. Kashen knelt. "No plasma burns. This wasn't us, or any of ours." Jalek scanned. Internal components stripped, comms board fried. Someone's jamming long-range feeds. Our relay's already degrading. Toxal's laughter stilled. They found 3 more bodies near the power hub. One slumped over a solar relay, another face down in snow with a broken jaw. Blood had long since frozen black. The generator was offline, deliberately sabotaged. Cables had been surgically severed. Every camera was lens shattered. This wasn't collapse. This was deliberate. Kashen tapped into the scout drone feed. "Deploy eyes. We need coverage." 3 silver bugs rose into the storm-blurred sky, flitting silently across the outpost's perimeter. Their signal relayed clean for 20 seconds, then static. One after another, they blinked offline. Jalek paled. "Signal killed. Too fast. Something's blocking with active interference. It's close. Impossible. They lack this tech. Unless it's not tech," Kashen muttered. "It's instinct." The wind howled harder. Snow swallowed the horizon. Toxal radioed in from an elevated ridge. "Found tracks. Bipedal. Too clean to be scavenger." "Where?" Kashen asked. Toxal didn't answer. Kashen repeated, "Where?" "Only white noise." He signaled. The squad. "Form tight grid. Everyone double back to relay point. We move silent." A creeping sense of unease spread through the group like infection. The snow muffled sound, but even so, they noticed something wrong. The wind carried no echoes, no footfalls, no breath. Kashen pinged Toxal's lock beacon. It glowed green, 50 meters northwest, just beyond a rocky incline. He advanced carefully with 2 flankers. As they crested the ridge, they saw a single boot sticking out from the snow. Toxal was there, or what remained. No blast, no struggle. Just a clean entry through his eye socket. One shot, instant death. The snow hadn't even had time to soak in the blood. Kashen froze. That was not the work of beasts or machines. That was a sniper. But Drethian 9 had no confirmed threats, no reports of resistance. The cold closed in tighter. Eyes up, Kashen barked. We are not alone. The squad closed ranks, weapons raised. Jalek tried another scan. Full spectrum, thermal sweep. Nothing. Still null, he whispered. There's nothing. A bead of black liquid dripped from the rock overhead, landing near Kashen's foot. He looked up instinctively, but saw only stone. Then he noticed the pattern in the snow beside them, slightly disturbed. A smooth arc like something had crouched, then vanished. He raised his rifle, pivoted on instinct. Nothing. Only snow. But as the wind surged again, Kashen thought, for the briefest second, he saw movement. Not in front of them. Behind. Just a blur. A shape that didn't belong. A ripple of fabric bending unnaturally against the cold. He turned quickly. Gone. Only the sound of his own breath echoed back into his ears. Something was watching, and whatever it was, it knew the terrain better than they did. It had patience, planning, and it wasn't afraid. The snow barely shifted as he crawled forward, 1 inch at a time, his body pressed flat to the frozen stone. Shade didn't feel the cold anymore. He hadn't for hours. The null temp gel coating his skin kept his heat signature flat, indistinguishable from the environment. The polymer fibers in his suit shifted shades automatically, blending with the rocky incline and mottled frost like oil on glass. He was a shadow in the white, a ghost in a forgotten war. 3 days. No sleep. His pupils had adjusted to the dim starlight, the optical overlay in his goggles outlining movement with faint blue pulses. His stomach gnawed at itself. He allowed 1 bite of protein ration every 12 hours, a sip of meltwater every 4, just enough to function, not enough to betray his position with waste or warmth. The alien patrol passed below, gliding over the snow in arrogant silence, their clawed feet hovering just off the surface. 11 now, since Toxol went still. Shade marked each one with a subtle blink of his left eye, range, wind vector, body armor density. His neural reticle did the math in silence. They hadn't changed formation in 2 hours. Predictable. Confident. Good. The scope extended like a breath. No click. No hiss. Just the quiet tension of a predator coiling for the bite. He selected the far-right soldier, Jalek, their signal specialist. Always glancing at his wrist. Always in the rear. Isolate the tech. Blind the group. The rifle made no sound when it fired. Subsonic slug. Non-reflective alloy. Mass shifted to kinetic at impact. Jalek's helmet snapped sideways like a toy. He dropped in a heap. The others froze. One reached for his comm. Shade had already switched targets. The second shot passed through the gap in the alien's shoulder plate and exited near his spine. Instant collapse. 10 left. He rolled, slowly, silently, into a natural depression in the ice. Covered himself with a light sweep of snow using his gloved forearm, went still. They scrambled in confusion. Voices sharp. Some screamed commands. No coordination. Good. That was the point. He tapped a small control at his chest. The comms crackled to life. Alien frequencies flooded into his earpiece. Staticky, panicked. Then he spoke into their ears. Not in their language. In his. Low and steady, the words of an Earth war song whispered into their channels. One by one the blades fell quiet, in the frost where hunters lie. Eyes that see, but none survive, for death comes slow beneath the sky. Silence followed, then yelling. Weapons fired into empty snowbanks. A plasma blast scorched a rock 5 meters from where he'd been. Shade smiled behind the mask. Not joy, not pride. Just satisfaction. Efficient chaos. His breath control training kicked in, slowing his heart. He felt each beat like the tick of a metronome, every exhale timed, every motion measured. He remembered Kalen, his squad leader, laughing during that final meal. The others, Mick, Torres, Gian, all dead now. Torn apart by the same assassin team prowling these cliffs. Kalen's last words still rang in his ears. If they ever send us to Drethion, we're cursed. That moon eats ghosts. Ghosts, Shade thought now, are what kill monsters. He remembered the ambush. 11 seconds from first shot to last breath. Plasma through the snow. Screams cut short. Only he'd survived, buried in the waste chute under 2 dead teammates. The aliens hadn't even checked for survivors. He remembered everything. Now, so would they. The aliens fanned out again. Their formation wider this time. They scanned in every direction. Shade waited until they moved into the shallow canyon, a dead end boxed by cliffs. He'd led them there. 2 nights ago, he dragged reflective material, pulled from the old comm satellite into position. Angled just right, it created phantom heat echoes. Confused their scans. Turned the canyon into a thermal funhouse. They would think he was behind them. Ahead. Above. But he was below, lying silent under a skin of frozen water. The next alien, a brute named Vorik, took a step onto unstable ground. Shade had weakened the ice earlier with acid from a cracked battery pack. It gave way. Vorik sank waist-deep. Before he could scream, a dart struck his exposed throat. Paralytic. Shade didn't waste bullets when poison would suffice. The alien thrashed, then stopped. 9. Panic blossomed. Kashen's voice came through strong, shouting orders in sharp clicks and syllables. But there was no unity left. They suspected each other, looked over their shoulders. Weapons jittered in their hands. Shade switched to infrared overlay, watched their body heat spike. Heart rates elevated. One urinated without realizing. Fear did the heavy lifting. He moved again, just 5 meters, into a shaded crevice that smelled faintly of dead moss and long-dried blood. Another firing position. Another angle. They thought humans were loud, crude, emotional. Let them. He watched as one of them, a younger one with silver ridges on his arms, broke formation and ran. Straight toward the cliff face. He didn't shoot him. He waited. The others saw the body later, curled in a fetal position, skull caved in where he'd slipped and fallen on the rocks. No honor. No glory. Only terror. 8. Shade exhaled slowly, almost reverently. He touched the small patch on his wrist where the names of his squad were etched. Heat from his skin warmed the etching faintly, enough for the smart cloth to trigger a brief illumination. They glowed for him. One by one, he closed the patch and kept moving. By the end of that second night, the assassins had set up camp inside the remains of the human outpost's generator station. The power was still dead. They didn't dare try to fix it now. They huddled, behind cold metal, and watched the darkness with unblinking eyes. Shade was already inside. He'd slipped in through a ruptured pipe, crawled through sludge and ice, and waited above them in the rafters. Just watched. Listened. One of them, Gricktal, took his helmet off to clean a wound. Shade dropped from above like a whisper and broke his neck before he could scream. 7. Caution would find the body positioned upright in the corner later. Eyes open, mouth stuffed with a strip of that old camouflage fabric they'd once mocked. By the 3rd day, they stopped laughing. The snow no longer looked white to them. It shimmered with threat. Every gust of wind brought imagined movement. Every shadow stretched too far. Caution stood at the center of the ruined outpost, plasma blade humming low at his side, staring into the cold horizon. 6. Only 6 of them remained. He had ordered tighter patrols, circular coverage, overlapping sectors, triangulated scans every 5 minutes. It should have worked. It would have worked, if they were still soldiers. But now, they didn't even trust each other. Gricktal had been found with a broken neck, propped in mockery. The look in his eyes, wide and glassy, haunted them. They knew the human could kill without being seen, without being heard. It was not a fight. It was a ritual, one by one, like it meant something. Caution barked orders, reasserted command, but Toklik flinched every time a comlink chirped. Varek kept muttering to himself in the old dialect, something about spirits, Curses. Enough, Kashen had snapped. You disgrace the scale blade. But they only stared at him. That night, the human whispered again. Through their comms. You don't need eyes when you own the silence. It wasn't even mocking anymore. It was soft, calm, inevitable. Kashen slammed his blade through the nearest transmitter array. Sparks danced across the floor. Hardline only, he ordered. No signals, no sound. But silence had already taken them. Far above, nestled, in the ruin of an old orbital relay dish, Shade watched the squad reposition. His breathing was shallow, practiced. He'd slowed his pulse so low it barely registered on his wrist. Wind roared past him, but inside his mind, everything was still. The chameleon suit adjusted to match the cracked ceramic under him. A reflective sheet hung loose nearby, angled to mimic heat. It was bait. Below, two of the aliens moved toward it. He'd rigged the snow to collapse just behind the decoy. Not enough to bury them, just enough to sound like footsteps. The mimic boots, crafted from scraps of alien armor and set on timer-triggered sleds, activated then. Crunch. 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 Alien. Footsteps. Perfectly paced. The two assassins panicked. One spun and opened fire, plasma bolts lighting up the night. The other screamed something in their language and ran. Shade didn't fire. He didn't need to. They were already breaking. He remembered the sniper school at Deep Range Alpha, the instructors with voices like static, the ice drills, the mantra. Silence is territory, own it, and they're trespassing. You don't shoot to kill. You shoot to prove you could. He'd passed the final test by going 10 days unseen in the desert. His instructor had found only his spent cartridge on the 12th sunrise, embedded in a warning post. A message. Now, he was writing a message here. The aliens had mocked the idea of human stealth, plant fibers and mud. But it wasn't the materials. It was the mindset. Humans hunted each other for sport before spaceflight. They didn't just study war. They romanticized it. Obsessively. Shade's legend had begun in the third quadrant already. Pilots on dropships spoke of the ghost of Drethion, of death from nowhere, of whispers in the comms. Tonight, he would become more. Below, Kashen regrouped with the last of his team. 4 of them. The 5th, Toklik, had wandered into a ravine earlier, chasing a shadow. They'd found only his hand, fingers twisted, in a frozen spasm around his own weapon. Kashen's voice cut through the icy wind. Stay here. I will sweep west. Hold this position. Do not break. No one answered. Shade moved as they argued. Slid down a slope, rolled into a crevice. Under the station, old heating ducts gave him perfect access. He crawled like a wraith. Dirt smeared across his visor. He heard Kashen whispering to himself in the dark. The commander wasn't even aware his helmet mic was still transmitting. This isn't a man. This is something else. Something old. Shade smiled faintly. Alien Command finally broke the silence over the emergency line. Their signal was fragmented, garbled by the interference Shade had laced across the ridge. But he heard enough. Extraction denied. Multiple anomalies. Reports of human active beyond Nightbite line. Sniper confirmed. He hunts by moonlight. He's already inside our lines. Inside. Varric finally snapped. Shade watched it happen from the shadows. The alien dropped his rifle, screamed a word that didn't translate, and sprinted into the storm. He didn't get far. Shade didn't even have to shoot. The cliff did the work. 3. Kashen returned an hour later, dragging his leg from a fall. His shoulder plate was cracked, his weapon gone, his eyes wild. You think you're winning? He screamed into the night. You're won! One thing. We are a dozen worlds. We are the edge of the blade. The wind answered him with silence. Shade was already behind him. He didn't strike. Not yet. He let Kashen limp to the center of the base. Alone now. The others either dead or vanished. Kashen activated the emergency beacon manually. A red pulse lit the sky in steady beats. He waited, cold breath fogging in front of him, bleeding, shaking. Then he heard the voice again. Do you know what it feels like? To be the last? Kashen spun, blade drawn. They called you assassins, the voice whispered. I'm not here for assassination. Caution's eyes flicked toward movement. Too slow. Shade stepped out from the snow, as if the cold had shaped him. No sound, no heat, no fear. This is not war, Shade said, raising the rifle. This is memory. Caution raised his blade and screamed. The shot echoed once, then only the wind. Caution ran. The snow was no longer just terrain. It was judgment. Every footfall felt like a drumbeat announcing his failure. The cold wasn't biting anymore. It was numbing, forgiving. But he didn't want forgiveness. He wanted escape. The ridge ahead loomed like salvation. He stumbled toward it, leg dragging behind him like a broken oath. His breath came in short, panicked bursts, frosting the inside of his cracked visor. He toggled his blade, flicked on every sensor still functioning, and screamed into his comm. Static. No command, no evac, only him. He told himself he was retreating, regrouping, planning a counter. But a deeper voice inside, one he'd buried, beneath rank and bravado, knew the truth. He wasn't escaping. He was being led. He stopped, looked around. No tracks, no birds, just silence. And then, a glimmer. A soft red laser traced across his chest. Too slow to be a targeting beam. Too deliberate to be random. A mirror, he realized too late. Bait! He spun, blade up, slashed into empty air. A sound came next from behind. A crunch of boots, deliberate. Caution turned again, pulse spiking. Nothing. Not nothing. A reflection. A second mirror caught a silhouette. Human, rifle in hand. Then it flickered out. A sound loop, a projected image. Ghost tactics, he was boxed in. This isn't war, Kashen shouted into the night. This is cowardice. The wind answered. He backed toward the outcropping, the old comms post looming like a tombstone behind him. Each step came slower. He knew he'd been reduced to the final piece on the board. A piece Shade had long since checkmated. The human wasn't fighting anymore. He was curating an ending. The last move came not with a bullet, but with a whisper. You laughed at Camouflage. Cation froze. It wasn't in his comm. It was right behind him. He turned. The figure stood tall, black suit melting into the landscape except for one thing. The face, painted in streaks of war mud, black, green, red, slashed across pale skin. Not a mask, not armor. A human face. Calm, steady, unblinking. The sniper didn't raise his weapon. Not yet. Kashen raised his blade with trembling hands. Shade stepped forward silently, close enough to speak, but still not touching. His voice was low, cold, and absolute. Now you get to see what it hides. The rifle came up, quiet as breath. Kashen saw the reflection of his own face in the scope. Fear. Disbelief. Understanding. The shot didn't echo. It was too quiet. For that, Kashen collapsed in silence, the snow embracing him. Shade knelt beside the body, drawing his blade with a reverence more priestly than militant. He carved a message into the comms tower wall. Each stroke measured. Humans adapt. Arrogance dies. Then he stepped back, scanned the horizon, and tapped the side of his visor. A thin beam pulsed upward into the night, encrypted in narrow band. A reply came within seconds. Confirmed. Ghost protocol complete. Shade didn't wait for more. He turned, vanishing back into the white. No tracks, no noise. As if even the snow conspired to forget he was ever there. Back at HQ, a file updated itself in a black vault under Threat Response, Level Zulu. The legend grew in whispers. A name passed between alien lips in haunted tones. The Night Sniper. By the time they understood what it meant, he was already watching his next target through the scope.